missile capability with the launch of Sputnik, the US rapidly deployed the only operational missile in their arsenal that could deter the Soviet Union. At 20 meters long and 2.4 meters in diameter, the Thor was an intermediate-range missile capable of lobbing a nuclear warhead 2,400 kilometers and was the United States' first operational nuclear strike missile. Due to its range, it was stationed in the UK between 1959 and 1963. As a logical extension of Redstone, the Jupiter missile was fielded to support the Thor missiles. 30 missiles were deployed to Italy at 10 sites, and later a further 15 missiles sited in Turkey. With a range of 2,410 kilometers, these posed a direct threat to Moscow. Deployed between 1959 and 1963, they were operationally obsolete very quickly and were withdrawn from service as part of the negotiations with the Soviet Union over the Cuban Missile Crisis. The missiles stationed in Italy suffered 4 lightning strikes whilst armed with megaton-range warheads. In each case, arming batteries were activated, and in 2 cases, tritium-deuterium boost gas was injected into the warheads, partially arming the devices. Lightning protection equipment was quickly installed at all sites.
Effort to expand wherever it can, to grow bigger, to take over, to supplant.
The R-5 Pobeda was better known in the West as the SS-3 Shyster, a single-stage theater missile with a detachable nuclear warhead. It entered service in 1956. R-12 Dvina was another theater-range megaton-tipped missile and the predominant European threat during the Cold War, and indeed the missile sent to Cuba that caused the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. With a range of 2,000 kilometers, it was a 3-stage liquid-fueled rocket.
All ships of any kind bound for Cuba, from whatever nation or port, where they found to contain cargoes of offensive weapons, be turned back.
In the face of U.S. determination, the Soviets dismantled their missiles and bombers and shipped them home. It was the retreat to Moscow. The democracies had served notice on the Russians that any aggressive threat in the Western Hemisphere would not be tolerated.
2 Terrier surface-to-air missiles are fired at a drone.
To counter the ballistic missile threat, ABM, or anti-ballistic missile system, was developed during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States to guard against a preemptive nuclear strike. The system comprised early detection satellites and radar tracking, then launching a high-speed missile for interception either in the booster phase of the enemy's rocket, i.e. in the atmosphere, or later in space when the warhead detaches from the booster.
The missile is launched.
The first successful interception of a ballistic missile with another was performed in 1961 by the Soviets at their Sarishagan test range. The Soviets then installed a ring of these A-35 ABM missiles around Moscow in 1966. These batteries also protected 2 Soviet ICBM complexes near to Moscow. These missiles have been constantly upgraded and are still in use today. ABM-1B was an advance on the A-35 missile and went operational in 1978. Gazelle and Gorgon are the later enhancements to this system. Project Nike was a US Army project for a line-of-sight anti-aircraft missile, and research was begun after World War II. The solid rocket booster developed would go on to become a staple rocket motor for numerous non-military applications. Project Nike Ajax was the US's attempt at an anti-ballistic missile system in the late 1950s and 60s, utilizing the Nike Hercules missile system, which was a 2-stage rocket. The Nike Zeus was an improvement in booster capability